Today, I'm joined in the studio by a very special guest, someone who has dedicated his life to public service. He's worked at different capacities serving, and it's no other than John Tizard, the current PCC, Bedfordshire Police Commissioner. Thank you, John, for joining me in the studio today.
But great to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, thank you. It's great to have you here. I mean, you've taken your time out of your busy time to be here today. I know you've got so many appointments and meetings to attend, so we appreciate you giving that time to
But I appreciate the
us.
opportunity, because part of my role is to talk with, and to listen to the people of Bedfordshire, and your radio station is a very good means of communicating between myself and
Thank you.
The people of Bedfordshire. So really pleased to be here, and I also believe I must be accountable and transparent.
Yeah.
So you interviewing me.
Yeah, thank you.
Part of that
I mean, you
process.
did. I followed you when you were campaigning before you got elected. So you did say that, and I'm glad. I can see that you are following through with that in some of your engagement, the things that you do in the community. But yeah, you're going to talk about the ways and how you've been doing this and delivering to the people of Bedfordshire. Yeah, obviously we're in Luton today, but you cover the whole of Bedfordshire. So yeah, it's an honour to have you here. So thank you for joining me. Right, so we're going to start with some of the things that you pledged when you were campaigning. Yeah. So your priorities like community policing, serious crimes, violence, crime against women and children. Since you got elected, how would you say that's evolved since that you got involved?
I think the policies and the priorities I stood on when I was elected in May of last year, so some 14 months ago, remain absolutely the key issues that I need to pursue on behalf of the people of Bedfordshire. You refer to improving and strengthening local policing. I was really pleased when earlier this year we were able to secure additional money from the government to enable us to employ in the current financial year 20 additional neighbourhood police officers, 10 students will be recruited, and we'll expand the very important police community support officer numbers by 8. But for me, local policing is about more than numbers. Yes, we want many more police on the streets, visible, but we want those police officers to be really focused on problem solving, prevention, and getting to know and understanding the communities they work with. And some people think that local policing, neighbourhood policing, is soft policing. It isn't, because those officers are the eyes and the ears of the police. So they will contribute in many ways to dealing with some of the more high-level, very serious crime that we sadly experience in Bedfordshire. So I think, and this very summer, and starting last week, we have an intensive programme in 6 of the town centres in the county, Luton being Luton Town Centre, Bury Park, Dunstable, Leighton Buzzard, Biggleswade and Bedford. And we'll see increased policing, increased police presence, tackling antisocial behaviour and retail crime in those town centres, but working very closely with the local authorities as well.
Okay, that's brilliant. I mean, that's a lot, going on there. But I mean, it's great. One of the things that you also mentioned is about restoring community policing. What steps have you taken to bring about that?
Well, as I say, we've increase the number of neighbourhood and community police officers.
Okay.
I think that's really important. But as I also said, it isn't just about numbers. Yes, I would like many more if we had the money. If we had the money, big if there. But
money is an
issue.
Okay.
However, it's how those officers relate to communities. So we've got a 1-year local policing strategy for this year, and we'll be developing a 3-year, 4-year strategy, which will be very much about how we reshape the way those officers work, and in the areas they work in, hopefully smaller areas, but also working much more closely with community organisations, councillors, local businesses, faith groups and others, because that's the way in which you develop a strong bond between police and community, but also how the police can be effective, because police on their own can't solve all the problems. They need to work in partnership.
I like that you mentioned that, because one of the things that we find is that trust between the police and people in the community, and some of the measures that you're taking is in bridging that gap, isn't it? And that restoring that confidence in police.
Well, I think, we know that nationally confidence and trust in policing has taken some very heavy knocks, and those have not been to do with things that have happened in Bedfordshire, but things like Garrick, Cousins and other things in the Metropolitan Police and incidents elsewhere. So we've got to restore that trust. Having visibility, having police that are known to, working with, involved in the community is important. But you build trust by the way in which the police respect victims, treat victims and support them. And it's how we tackle crime right across the piece. Because neighbourhood and community police officers do a tremendous amount of important work. But they're not dealing with, gun crime. They're not dealing with gang crime. They're not dealing with high-end drug crime. They're not dealing with specialist crime to support women, for example, who have been the subject of rape or serious sexual attack. They're not dealing with child protection. So we have a whole range of officers also working. So to improve confidence, I think we have to have high performance. We have to solve more crime. We have to prevent more crime. But we have to have that relationship between police officers and the community. And part of my role as Police and Crime Commissioner, I have no operational responsibility. I'm not responsible for how the police do their day-to-day operational activities, but I see my role as being that bridge between the public and the police, being the voice of the public into the police, and hopefully through using that voice, by listening to the public, being able to ensure that the police are working in ways and behaving in ways which are more appropriate. And there's a whole range of things we have to do to tackle confidence and trust. We also have to, and we have, Bedfordshire is very good at this, it's root out those officers whose professional standards are just not appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. We've got a podcast going on here with someone from your team, but, we wouldn't digress. You mentioned about funding, which I know is very critical. We're not going to go deep into that, but I see how that can impact on some of the work you're doing. I think, you're doing a great job. How do you go about recruitment? Because then the strain that we see on policing as well, because obviously you've got the team, and they can you've only got a certain amount of police officers, for instance, in the county, and then you've got calls, the level of crime having gone up. How do you manage that in terms of getting more people in the police force?
Well, we've actually got more officers now than we've had for many, many years. Okay. However, ideally, we would have more officers, we'd have more police staff, because police staff who may not carry a warrant card do a very important job, and they do many activities which the public may expect to be done by police officers, like scene of crime. Many of the, when you dial 999, you're more likely to be answered by a member of staff rather than a police officer, and in many other roles. So we need to be a good employer. We need to be an employer of choice. I would very much like us to have a police service, both police officers and police staff, that looks more like our very diverse community, and we've got some way to go to do that. That said, funding is really a critical issue. Bedfordshire has the lowest level of funding of any police force and police service in the country per head of population, but we have some of the highest crime. So part of my job, and I was having the conversation only yesterday with the police minister, is to seek to persuade government to give Bedfordshire more of what is not a huge, big national pot, but we need to get more than our share of that.
I hope our Prime Minister listens. We do need it. So you've reorganised the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner and strengthened accountability, the accountability boards. So what early wins would you say that you've had? And what's next?
Well, in terms of strengthening governance, I have the responsibility of holding the Chief Constable to account for delivering, as the law calls it, an effective and an efficient police service. And I also hold him to account for taking my police plan into account in its operational decisions and the overall performance of Bedfordshire Police. So I have monthly accountability meetings, which I call Performance and Governance Board, but they're accountability meetings where the Chief Constable presents reports on performance, lots of data, but also qualitative information. And then I question him and have detailed conversations and set expectations to where we need to go. I have a very good relationship with the Chief Constable, so that works very well. I've also looked to strengthen my accountability to the public. I have a responsibility to attend what is called the Police and Crime Panel, which is a body set up in law which has representatives of the 3 local authorities in Bedfordshire, Bedford Borough, Central Bedfordshire Council and Luton Borough Council, and some independent members, and they scrutinise my performance. In fact, we had a meeting earlier this week. They scrutinise how I'm holding the chief to account and overall performance. I've also put in place monthly challenge meetings where I go around the county meeting the public, inviting the public to come to a public meeting to ask me whatever they want to ask and to challenge me to explain what I'm doing. I do a lot of visits to communities, faith organisations, schools and others to get out there and get some visibility, and again to have that dialogue, because if I talk to people do I know what their concerns are and what the issues are and what the impact of what we're doing is. And we are about later this summer or early in the autumn to do the first opinion poll of public opinion in the county on issues such as trust and confidence, but also to identify what communities see as the priority for policing. And I think that will be really interesting, because Bedfordshire is a diverse county in so many ways, not just the obvious one, in terms of heritage and ethnicity, but we have rural, we have urban, we have small towns, we have villages. We have quite the age profile. So I'm really interested to know what people living in different parts of the county with different experiences, and particularly young people, want from the police. So I think I'm putting all that in. I think with my first year, in my annual report, I called it a foundation year. I think you mentioned the office, making sure I got an office that can deliver what needs to be done to deliver my plan and to enable me to fulfil my statutory duties. Really establishing relations with a whole range of partners, because again, as I said, the police can only do so much. So actually, if we're going to really prevent crime, that's one, must be my number one. The police can't do it on their own. We have to work with local authorities, have to work with schools, with communities, and indeed with community residents and others. So I've been establishing, putting all that in place. I think we've done, give some other examples, we've really transformed the way in which my office manages grants to voluntary community organisations, and we have a budget of over £3 million for that. And I've been very keen that we moved away from fairly bureaucratic systems that only really benefited large organisations to focus very much on relational grants that will benefit local communities, working with local community organisations, local charities, and all that's now taking place.
That's brilliant. Okay. I mean, that's interesting. So, because you talked about when we talk about crime, crime is often linked to poverty, and I think that's something that is key, because you obviously, when you do the survey or when you go out to the community, I'm sure you hear people. It's a lot of the places where you have, where you have increased criminal activities, I believe, are in the deprived areas. So there's a real link.
I've deliberately called my police and crime plan a safer and a fairer Bedfordshire, because, I'm passionate about social justice and equality, but I actually believe you need social justice, criminal justice, and human rights as the three sides of the same triangle. And you're absolutely right. If you are impoverished or poor, you're more likely to be the victim of crime. Potentially, you're more likely to be enticed into crime. I say that quite carefully, because if you're poor, it doesn't mean you get automatically get crime.
Yes.
But a child from a family that's impoverished, maybe some other problems at home, much more open to be seduced, enticed
into criminal
things, areas like county lines and elsewhere, and once in, absolutely trapped for life. So for me, it's really important. And here in Luton, working very closely with Luton Borough Council, who have got their very ambitious but very imaginative 2040 vision to eliminate poverty, to create social justice in the town, really does align. So actually, I'm working with the council now to see how we can bring what I want to do alongside what they want to do, and get the added value for it, and of course, clearly do it in other parts of the county as well. So tackling the causes of crime has to be as important as tackling crime itself.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. So, up to my next question. So, how are you working with the criminal justice system, the courts, for instance, probation, to bring about improvement for both victims and offenders?
Clearly, as Police and Crime Commissioner, I have very specific responsibilities for policing, and I have a relationship with the police service which is different from the relationship I have with the wider criminal justice system. However, I have a duty, again in law, but one which I relish and I think is really important, to coordinate and convene the wider system. I chair a body called the Local Criminal Justice Board, which brings together the police, the probation service, the Crown Prosecution Service, the prison service, youth offending service, local authorities, health, the judiciary, and I could go on, but a big group of people, because only if we work together can we make improvements.
Yeah.
We know that there are real pressure points within the system. So however effective the police are, if we haven't got a good relationship with the Crown Prosecution Service and they're not doing a good job, we won't be able to get people to charge. We know we've got, a very big and growing backlogs at both Luton Crown Court and Luton Magistrates, and they are the only two courts in the county. So we've got to do something like that. How can it be right that a victim of rape may have to wait 3 or 4 years for her case to get to court? I mean, that's just beyond comprehension and acceptability. Yeah. We know the position in the prison service, which is, overcrowded. We're sending too many people to prison on short-term sentences. I'm really pleased that the government is going to implement the David Gort review on sentencing review, because and that then has an impact on the probation service. Let's have more community schemes rather than custodial schemes. So there's a lot to be done. So I think you have to bring everyone together. No one agency, no one authority, no one public body can solve the problems. And yes, the police have a big job to do in enforcing the law, and they must enforce the law fairly and reasonably, but but strongly, because we can't deviate from the law. But actually, if we can avoid people falling into that, if we can have schemes that even when someone has been found, either guilty of a crime or clearly has committed a crime, to be able to divert them so they don't get into custodial sentences, they don't get trapped into a criminal justice system. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work already being done, but we need to do a lot more.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Now, we've talked about the community trust between the police, what we, I think currently, if we look at the local leaders, the office that you hold is one that I would say you're because you cover both Luton and Bedfordshire, so your office covers a wide location of county. Is that how to put it? Unlike we have MPs that are restricted to that, so it's a massive office that you're managing. But what I'm thinking now, we're talking about the community, families. Now, within the police force, as the PCC, are you, or does your office, if I put this correctly, support police officers? Because also we've got to recognise that police officers are humans, and a lot of them, when they go out there, they're faced with danger. And that's something that we don't often talk about as a community. We don't. Yeah.
You're right. I mean, I'm the only elected politician for the whole of Bedfordshire.
Yeah.
With 730,000 people. So it's a different role for a member of parliament. It's a different role from being the leader of Luton Borough Council or the elected mayor of Bedford. They're all very important roles. And I work with all the MPs of all political colours very effectively. I work with the leaders of the councils too. I have no direct involvement in terms of support for police officers. I certainly, go out of my way to thank and to demonstrate my appreciation on behalf of the public to police officers. I also ensure, and it's absolutely critical to my plans and my approach, that we have really good welfare support for police officers, very good training, and that we are a really good employer. I want us to be an exemplary employer. You're absolutely right. One of the things I often say, because I go to the passing out parades for new officers, and I will say often to them and to their families who are often present, when there's a real crisis, we will be running one way, you'll be running into that danger. And you don't necessarily know as an officer, when you start your shift on a brilliant sunny morning like this morning, what you might come across.
Yeah.
You might go through a door and find some appalling scenes. But what is totally unacceptable is when the public abuse police officers. We get police officers physically attacked, and that is absolutely unacceptable. And those people have to have the full law. But it's when people are abusive and rude to officers who are actually there to serve them. And you're absolutely right. Police officers are just you and I. It was Peel, when he introduced modern British policing, he said the police are citizens, the citizens are police, and that really is important.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we are the second stage of your plan. So this is it's 1 year. It's just gone over 1 year since
just over a year, yeah.
Just over a year since you got elected. So what's next? What are your top priorities for the coming year?
Well, my priorities, which I call my missions for the next 3 years, really build on those that I got elected on 15 months ago, those from last year. But they're refined because I've been listening to people, I've been learning, and I want to get the best. I also looking what's going on in other parts of the country, or indeed, elsewhere. If there's really good, good policing in Berlin or in wherever, let's bring it to Bedford. But certainly, let's bring it from.
So you learn.
We need to do the best, and we have to learn, and we also have to share. We've got some really great things here. For me, the most important thing is prevention, because if we can prevent crime, It means that those who might otherwise have become victims are not going to become victims. Those who might have fallen into criminality may not fall into criminality. And it has a huge benefit to society and financially to all the public organisations. But that is something we can only do, we do it collaboratively. That cannot be just the police themselves. The second is to build trust and legitimacy in policing. And we do that, as I said it earlier, in answer to one of your earlier questions, about improving police performance, the way the police relate to and respect and treat victims appropriately, keep victims informed, and then it is really to change the whole system so that justice, from the moment you are the victim of a crime right through to sentencing in court and maybe beyond, is as short as possible, as effective as possible, and treats the victim and indeed the defendant with respect. Because when I talked about that 4-year delay for some court cases, a 4-year delay for somebody who actually ultimately is innocent is, again, not acceptable.
Yeah, if they are innocent,
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, so that's the end of my question for you, John, but about your office.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go back to your, not so much of your personal life, but you've been in the public. You've been in the public service for a long time, and I know a lot of your background is in leadership, in governance, policy, and all that. What inspired you? What made you choose that path?
Well, I suppose that, as I said earlier, I mean, I've had a passion for social justice and human rights, and really for a public sector that is effective, and that goes back to my university days, and it's carried on with me. I was very fortunate to be a county councillor in Bedfordshire for 18 years. It was a very long innings, and I was leader of the council for some of that period. It was 25 years ago, and I thought I'd come out of elected politics.
Wow.
But when I saw the opportunity to be the Police and Crime Commissioner, it was one I couldn't resist standing, and thankfully being elected, and thankful for the people who elected me, because I think again it's that continuation of how can we make a difference, not to make a difference for me. I'm just incidental in this, but how do we make a difference for the residents of this county and the businesses and the communities of this county? And I think, the Police and Crime Commissioner role gives me that. It gives me that ability, yes, to ensure we have an effective, efficient and modern police service. And, we're pretty good, but we've got a lot more work to do there. However, it's how we get that whole system change. Because if we can get that system change, we can start to reduce crime, we can make people both safer and feel safer. Yeah. And I think because I've had a local government background and I've worked in consultancy in the public sector as well in the past, I've got that broad knowledge and that understanding of how the system works, and hopefully can navigate my way around it.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's John Tizard, the current Police Commissioner of Bedford. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you in the studio.
Great to be here.
Thank you.